Hi, this is Adrienne at Blue Grouse Wine Cellars, and I'm going to tell you about a project that we recently completed in West Vancouver. We were contacted by the homeowners. They wanted to convert the space that you see here into a small wine cellar. They weren't really making great use of this space the way it was set up with table and chairs. This is in a rec room area in their home, and they also, of course, needed some wine storage. As you can see from this picture, the most unique feature of this space is the curved wall. It wasn't enclosed, so we had to finish the curve and close the space and add wine racking and temperature control. But before we could do that, we needed to renovate that wall and the ceiling to insulate and vapor barrier the cavity for proper temperature control. Luckily here we didn't have in-floor radiant heating to contend with, which we often do in finished spaces where we're converting an area of the home that wasn't originally intended to be a wine cellar. In that case, we also have to build up an insulated platform, so that was one part that was a little bit easier. So after meeting with the homeowner and seeing their space, taking some measurements, we discussed with them how many bottles they wanted to store in their wine cellar, what their collection was like, or what they envisioned it was going to become once they had a proper wine cellar to store it. And then, of course, what they wanted it to look like, materials, finishes, etc. This was the first version of the design that we came up with. As you can see here across the front, we have a glass door and a couple of side lights. This was designed as a framed insulated glass enclosure, which is a little better for efficiency of a wine cellar than frameless glass. But that was the one thing the owner decided they wanted to change, just because there is some kind of thickness and in the framing around the door, especially when we do an insulated glass enclosure. And so what we ended up on was this design. So the racking inside basically stayed the same. They were quite happy with the original design, what we'd come up with, but we did change the front wall to frameless glass. With the frameless glass, we had to upsize their cooling unit because you don't have any R value in that 12 millimeter single pane glass. So you need to pump quite a lot of cooling power in there to compensate for that. Here is a shot of the cooling system that's ducted into the wine cellar. So this is in a storage closet right directly behind the wine cellar. You have 4 ducts in total coming off of the cooling unit. 2 are going into the wine cellar. So one is blowing the cold air in, the other one is directing the return air back to the cooling unit. Then there's a further 2 ducts coming off, one of which is actually running up over top of the door, and that's where the hot air is exhausting. And then the last duct is directed to another area that's pulling in fresh air for the cooling system. This particular cooling unit that we used for this project is a Cellar Pro 4200 VSI with the 2 ducting hoods and ducting kit. We really like Cellar Pro cooling units. They're made in the USA, very good quality, and they've performed very well for us in a number of projects over the years. Here's a picture of the final product, the finished wine cellar. So just walking you through some of the elements, we of course have the frameless glass across the front here. This was done as Starfire low iron glass, so it removes any of that green tinge that you sometimes see around the edges of the glass, and it's just super, super clear. So that was a nice upgrade that the owners decided to do. Looks really, really nice in this space. And then they've also chosen to do matte black hardware. So you can see that in the U channel that is around the fixed panels of glass, as well as in the door hinges and the door handle. What you don't really see in this picture, and that's a good thing, is the weather stripping around the door. It's just a thin mohair, low pile weather stripping, kind of a fuzzy strip that goes around the perimeter of the door and just seals the very small gap between the edges of the door and the side lights and then the floor and the ceiling. So we don't want air escaping around the door. We want that to be fully sealed. So we do quite a good job with our glass installations, with it being a wine cellar in mind and the importance of that good quality seal. Now looking at the wine racking, all of this millwork is done in a red oak with a custom stain and lacquer finish. It was matched to a sample that the client provided, and you have a combination of bulk bins on the bottom. So you can see some of them are kind of a diamond shape here, so that's great for bulk storage of wine when you're buying wine by the case. We also have rectangular bins systems, which can have just bottles stacked in them like you see here. Or if the client had wood cases, they would also fit in this position. Then we have a display roll on a 15-degree angle, so the corks of the bottles are still staying wet, and that's nicely lit with LED strip lighting. And then above that, we have a few separate enclosed spaces with triple deep Vindustry peg hardware. The Vindustry peg hardware is a stock product for us. This one was done in the black anodized aluminum finish. Again, so 3 bottles deep, as you can see here, very sturdy. We provide anchor bolts, so you can even mount through the face of the millwork, which is what we chose to do with this installation. And these pegs can also be just ordered directly through our website. You then see we've got a beautiful archway feature in the center as the focal point of this wine cellar, which provides a little bit of counter space where they're currently displaying some port bottles. And that also has some LED lighting inside. And over top of the archway is some label forward storage for Magnum bottles. To complete the look of this cellar and provide a truly turnkey solution, also had our electrician install a couple of LED pot lights in the ceiling that are on a dimmer so the client can adjust the brightness. So that kind of wraps up this wine cellar. It's a totally custom job, turnkey from start to finish, all of the renovations, all of the custom millwork, the peg hardware, the electrical, the lighting. And so it was very straightforward for this customer from start to finish. If you have a space in your home that you would like to also convert to a wine cellar, please reach out and we're happy to help.